In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, and that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins, and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. I heard the story once of a guy named Jake who was traveling through Mexico, and he had been working on his Spanish, but it was still a little shaky. He was a graduate student from Texas, and he had signed up for a cultural immersion trip in the south of Mexico, and he knew, again, the basics of Spanish, but it wasn't great. But he'd figured that he'd pick up more along the way. Well, on his second day of the trip, he boarded a crowded bus heading to Oaxaca City in the south. The bus was hot and loud, and the AC was more of a theory than a feature. But he found a seat next to an older woman who was clutching a woven basket on her lap. And so she gave him a polite nod, but her body language was distant, and she seemed a bit guarded. And so for the first hour or so of the trip, they sat in silence. She seemed uninterested, and Jake, who was kind of a, outsider, he didn't want to intrude. But when the bus hit a pothole, her basket tumbled out of her lap to the floor, scattering tamales across the aisle. And in that moment, instinct kicked in. Jake jumped up to help, and without thinking, he said, "Le ayudo?" which is Spanish for, "Can I help you?" And the woman looked surprised because, of course, she saw him as a gringo, as an ignorant American, and maybe she thought that he didn't speak Spanish. And she smiled. Not that polite kind of smile, but the warm, surprised kind that reaches the eyes. And she said, "Hablas español? Do you speak Spanish?" And Jake admitted, "Un poquito. Estoy aprendiendo. I speak a little bit. I'm learning." Well, that changed everything. She began chatting with him in a slow, careful Spanish, and Jake responded with clumsy grammar, but, he was able to keep it up in Spanish, and she was very patient. Before long, she was telling him about her grandchildren, the town she grew up in, the best place to get mole in Oaxaca. She began to open up. And other passengers there in the same bus, part of the bus, joined in. A man behind them offered Jake a mango slice. Another woman corrected his pronunciation with a laugh. Right, so the whole back of the bus turned into a cheerful, bilingual conversation. Whatever awkwardness had fallen away, whatever distance or iciness of the situation had melted. Isn't it amazing how language connects us? The ability to communicate and to understand and to be understood. It's really an amazing thing. And this is how the church was born, through the miracle of languages, in which the Holy Spirit, who we celebrate today on the solemnity of Pentecost, acts through the apostles to speak the language that each of the people there in Jerusalem needed to hear. We read from the Gospel. The people witnessing this were astounded, and in amazement, this is referring to the coming of the Holy Spirit, the descent of the Spirit as tongues of fire upon the apostles, the holy women, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and that the first followers of Christ begin to speak in tongues and speak in the different languages. And so the crowd responds. They were astounded, and in amazement they asked, "Are not all of these people who are speaking Galileans from the region of Galilee, then how does each of us hear them in their native language? We are Parthians, Medes, and Elamites, inhabitants of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the districts of Libya near Cyrene, as well as travelers from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs. Yet we hear them speaking in our own tongues of the mighty acts of God. Jesus, what an incredible miracle you performed on Pentecost. Each one heard the apostles speaking in his or her native tongue. So imagine in the crowd, people were hearing the apostles in Mesopotamian, in Cappadocian, in Phrygian, Pamphylian, right? Whatever languages they spoke there, Egyptian, Cyrenian, who knows what different languages were there, Parthians, Medans, the Elamite language, whatever that was. Maybe they heard Latin if they were from Rome, Arabic, it says there were Arabs. An incredible, incredible miracle. What does this all mean? Well, firstly, that the apostles have received the gift of the Holy Spirit, something that they had been begging for days, really for 10 days between your ascension, Jesus, into heaven, your returning to the Father, and the coming of the Spirit. It was a 10-day period of preparation where the church was begging the Holy Spirit to come. The Holy Spirit came in tongues of fire, and the Holy Spirit gave them the gift of language, the gift of tongues. And this gift allows them to reach all men and women of every race, of every ethnicity, of every culture. Jesus, you send out the church in all directions. Go to the four winds. Go to the ends of the earth, preaching and baptizing. And I will be with you to the end of the ages, and I will give you the words that you need. Jesus, you are so good, and your promises come true. You had promised them that you would send your Spirit. Don't you remember in the upper room on Easter Sunday? Jesus appears to the apostles in risen form in his glorious body, and he says to them, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Jesus, you breathe on the apostles, you send them your Spirit, and this brings with it the gift of tongues. Now, Jesus has wanted this for us too, for each of us, because we too are apostles of the Lord, and we too are recipients of the Holy Spirit, especially those of us who have been confirmed, who have undergone the sacrament of confirmation. We have the Holy Spirit, and so this gives us the gift of tongues, to speak the tongue or the language of each person we encounter. And this is very powerful, like we saw in that story with Jake, that lady, that abuelita, was so moved when she heard him speak her language. Wow, you speak my language. Now I can open up to you in a way that I couldn't before. It's a way of identifying with the other, connecting with them. Now, when we speak of the gift of tongues, of the Holy Spirit, it doesn't mean that we necessarily speak other languages, that we need to start learning Spanish or Russian or, Arabic or Chinese. No, it doesn't mean that we become polyglots on a technical level. But each of us is called to be an apostle and to reach as many souls as we can through the friendships that we form. And so this will entail being able to speak the words that each person needs. We know that friendship is all about understanding, connecting, and the Holy Spirit will give us the gift of tongues to be able to break those barriers that distance us from other people, to know what to say and what not to say. We can ask the Holy Spirit right now for this gift. We can ask Our Lady, spouse of the Holy Spirit, that she might give us a clue as to how to grow in this gift of tongues, so that in every conversation that we have, the words that we use are infused with the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.